When you start scrolling through a sea of budget guitars, it's easy to feel a pang of regret before you even click Add to Cart. You've probably heard the story: a super cheap replica looks great in the photo, you get it home, and suddenly the tremolo feels like a loose hinge, the tuning slacks after a few minutes, and that vintage vibe you were hoping for just evaporates. That's why I always pause before I spend my hard-earned cash on anything that promises a classic look without the classic pedigree. Today I'm digging into the Fender 70th Anniversary American Vintage II 1954 Stratocaster, 2-color Sunburst, to see if the price tag really translates into a smarter buy or if it's just another pretty case that'll end up in the regret pile. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about why a Strat from Fender's 70th Anniversary line matters. This isn't a factory floor rehash. It's a limited run that tries to capture the look and feel of a 1954 original, right down to the ash body and maple neck. For players who've been chasing that vintage sweet spot, the subtle mid-range chime that you hear on classic recordings, the idea of getting it without hunting down an actual 1954 instrument is tempting. But the real question is whether the modern build actually delivers those tones in a day-to-day gig setting, and whether the price is justified compared to either a true vintage, if you can afford it, or a more straightforward contemporary Strat. Who should consider this guitar? If you're a serious hobbyist or a semi-professional player who already knows what a Strat should feel like, and you're looking for a piece of Fender's history that still holds up on stage, this model makes sense. The ash body is lighter than the typical alder body you see on most modern Strats, which can be a blessing during long set lists. I've seen musicians with arthritis talk about the lighter weight easing fatigue when they're on their feet for 3-hour shows. Also, the 2-color Sunburst Finish isn't just a visual nod to the 50s, it's a finish that has been praised for its durability. You can toss this guitar into a gig bag, run it through a humid rehearsal space, and expect the paint to stay intact for years. On the flip side, if you're a beginner still figuring out basic chord changes, or you're on a shoestring budget, you might want to skip this one. The price point sits well above entry-level models, and the vintage-style single-coil pickups, while great for that classic glassy tone, can be a bit noisy when you crank up the gain. New players who haven't yet sorted out how to tame single-coil hiss might find the guitar a little frustrating until they learn proper shielding or switch to a humbucker-style pickup in the future. Now, let's talk specifics that matter once the box is opened. The first thing you notice is the neck profile. Fender opted for a mid-radius maple neck with a comfortable shaped feel, which is what many vintage-era Strats had. In practice, this means you can slide into the upper 12th fret without feeling cramped, which is a huge plus for lead players who like to bend notes high up the neck. I tested the neck on a couple of classic blues licks and a fast country twang, and the action stayed consistent, no sudden dead spots or buzzing on the high frets. That kind of consistency is often missing on cheaper copies that use lower-grade maple or composite necks. The 3 single-coil pickups are another focal point. Fender claims they're modeled after the original 54 voicing, and you can hear a difference when you compare them to a modern hot pickup in a typical consumer Strat. Clean tones ring clear with a balanced bite, and when you pull the bridge pickup into a slight overdrive, the note definition stays intact, a quality that's prized by studio musicians who need every nuance to be audible in a mix. However, there's a downside. Those vintage-style coils tend to pick up a fair amount of 60 Hz hum when you're near fluorescent lights or a small amps transformer. In a well-grounded studio environment, the noise is negligible, but on a cramped bedroom practice space it can become audible, especially if you like to use a high-gain pedal. The tremolo system is a modern recreation of the classic synchronized tremolo, and it performs better than many budget versions. The springs are housed in a steel block that prevents the bridge from slipping, which is a common complaint on cheap tremolos that go out of tune after a few dives. In a live scenario, I tried a full-range shark dive on a high-energy rock song, and the tuning held within a half-step, impressive for a design that still uses vintage-style pivots. That said, the tremolo isn't as smooth as a fully vintage-restored unit. There's a faint click you can feel when you release the bar fully, which seasoned players might notice and try to dampen with a small piece of fabric under the springs. One hidden trade-off is the hardware. The